Yo, what's good? It's Narcissist himself, King Tynex here, back with another video, and you guys already know the deal. This is going to be a movie, and the thing about this movie is that it's also like a birthday gift for Neptune, since like the day this is going to be uploaded, it's going to be the 18th birthday. So yeah, let's just get on to the video. So Issei, you could say was a pretty unusual child throughout the years. The thing about Issei was that he had like two different personalities for some reason. It's like at one moment he was somebody that would be complaining about the tiniest of things regarding work, and at another moment he would be seen as rather aggressive, wanting to fight everybody within the vicinity. It was honestly kind of terrifying. There was a whole issue of him actually being rather strong as well. Throughout the years, his parents, they would try to control this second nature of Issei. The first one wasn't so bad, it was just him complaining about work, but they could deal with that. What they couldn't deal with was his want to fight so many people so often. They would try and get him some counseling, but no matter what they did, it never seemed to work. It never seemed to stick for very long. He was seen as a threat to most of the schools that he went to. Issei, he would have been relatively, well, not relatively, more so this. Issei, he would have had relatively long hair, and for some reason, one day he decided to dye the ends of his hair pink. This would actually make him even more of a threat. Interestingly enough, other kids, they were trying to pick on him for his decision to dye some of his hair pink, but they would find themselves in a critical condition afterwards. The luckiest of the individuals, they would only find themselves having a broken nose and black eye. Others, they would end up in the ER. They would have broken arms and legs. Needless to say, most people, they would try to avoid making fun of his hair or even making eye contact in some extreme situations. Issei's name, it would begin to spread to other schools as well. He would have been completely clueless as to these rumors though. He heard some, but well, he didn't really connect them back to himself. The way he saw himself was as if he was a teddy bear, as if he could do no harm. Issei was always hyperactive. He never really seemed to get tired. He noticed that his strength would rise every time he fought somebody that, well, deeply upset him as well. Every time he had been angered, for example, it was as if he was a completely different beast. It was rare that he ever got truly angry though, so those especially rare occasions meant a lot. Those kids, they would usually need to get surgery. They needed to get stitches and surgery. Some, they would probably even suffer some internal wounds and have a bit of challenges with walking afterwards. But that never really seemed to bother Issei. The whole fact that he was so aggressive, he never actually focused on it. Why would he? He would honestly focus more on his dreams though, because over the years he would have some pretty weird dreams, usually revolving around him being with some slime he called his bestie. Not only that, but Issei, he sounded like a girl for some reason too in those dreams. Issei's parents, as a last resort, they were deciding to just enroll him into Cool Academy. Once they found out it had begun to exempt boys as well. It was originally an all-girls academy, but in recent times they decided to change that. They were hoping that, well, he would become more gentle and less hyperactive at this school. Unfortunately though, he would meet a specific person that would just ruin all of their hopes. This person being a boy by the name of Saji. He also went to this academy. They would immediately hit it off, and the two of them, they would begin to goof around with each other and goof around all around the school. They would cause for there to be a ruckus. They would end up making a name for themselves at this school as well. They would have been called the Chaotic Duo. Two individuals would begin to notice the amount of attention these boys were getting, and they weren't all that happy with it at all. You see, the two individuals, they would be Sona Citri and Rias Gremory. Sona, she was the class president, while Rias, she was the president of the occult research club. Many of the guys at the school would pursue after them, only to get rejected right after most of the time. For once though, the girls, they would actually be the ones to approach the boys first, not the other way around. Most of the students would find this to be highly unusual, especially when the two boys mentioned were the Chaotic Duo. The boys, they were really hoping that it wasn't that, while Rias and Sona weren't romantically interested in these boys. Like, what could they possibly see in them? These guys were troublemakers, and when it came on to Sona and Rias, they were basically like the goody two-shoes of their school. They put in structure, so they were hoping that it would rather be they were trying to discipline them at best, try and get them to understand what they were doing was wrong. The latter would be true, and Sona, she would be the first of the two to actually attempt to talk to the boys. She didn't want to get into a physical altercation with the boys, but they didn't seem to listen to reason. They would eventually force a hand though, after a constant annoyance. She would approach the boys thinking of them to not be anything more than just some hooligans. She planned on teaching them some discipline for once in their lives, but unfortunately she failed pretty miserably. Sona, she would find herself actually kneeling in Issei's presence. Issei would have had his foot on top of her head, and Saji, he would be drinking a beer, laughing at the sight of Sona. Rias, she would walk into the room wondering just what was taking Sona so long. She would freeze though at the sight and seeing Sona, basically one of her closest friends, with her glasses broken, her clothes tattered, and kneeling with Issei's foot sitting on her head. Rage, that's all that was fueling her right now. That's all that was fueling Rias at this point. Regular logic, common sense, none of these things would be on Rias's radar right now. She had completely lost it. Clearly these boys weren't normal, so she didn't find it necessary to have to hold back here. She wouldn't expect him to be taken down so easily though by a headbutt. The headbutt would actually come from Saji. He would have ran up to Rias and he would have just simply headbutted her. She was expecting to take him down first since he seemed to be the weaker of the two, but she was severely mistaken about the gap in strength. Issei would laugh and bump fists with Saji after seeing the blonde knock her down to the floor in record time. It really seemed like their sparring sessions were coming in handy. The girls, humiliated, they would actually report what happened to their siblings. Seraphal, she would tease Sona for the fact she lost to a couple of boys and how she had a feeling, well, maybe she unconsciously held back. For all she knew, well, Sona could actually be attracted to one of them. Sona would immediately deny it though, and she would talk about how they were hooligans, they deserved to be punished, they needed to learn discipline, they were at school to learn, not goof off. Rias, she would have had a different reaction from her brother though, and where he would actually be questioning whether they used magic at any point. Rias, she would deny it, and Sir Zex, he would see this as pretty odd. He was thinking that there may be a chance that they either did have some relations to mythological beings, or they were just on drugs. He was gonna go with the latter, since Rias never mentioned them having some sort of magical aura or anything along those lines for some reason. That was the only thing that they could really go off of right now. Maybe they want some form of performance enhancing drug, and they caught the girls off guard last time with them actually being so strong, so unusually strong. Well, for a regular human, that is, not for like a devil or anything. And so Zex would just tell Rias that he doubted that two regular humans could defeat even the weakest of devils without some form of outside influence and luck. It's rather than Rias was just unlucky in that situation, and if she were to go back to fight them again, it would be a very different story. Rias would want to take another shot at defeating the boys in combat after hearing that. She would definitely bet on last time being a stroke of luck for those boys. She would hold her back. Well, Sona, she would hold her back though. She would inform Rias of the fact that the two boys were brutes. Nothing more, nothing less. It would be better to go back to using their brains in order to communicate with them. Try another form of compromise. Issei would have been playing video games in the computer room when Rias and Sona actually approached him. He would immediately recognize them though without even having to turn around to face the girls. He would call them out by name, surprising the two of them. At first they figured that he may have seen them through the reflection of the computer screen, but no. They would look deep enough and there wasn't really much of a reflection going on. Not enough to where it would be able to just give a direct reflection of Sona and Rias properly. Issei, he would just continue playing this game and reveal his knowledge of these two being devils. This would honestly shock the girls even more. It made no sense for this guy to know something like that. Sona, she would even try to play it off as Issei, meaning that their families became wealthy through dirty means, but that didn't necessarily mean they were comparable to devils. That was honestly kind of rude. She would kind of nervously laugh as well, but Issei, he would pause his game at this point, and he would even turn around. He would narrow his eyes, and he would establish that the two of them had abnormally high amounts of magic. Their magic was tainted as well, allowing him to fully realize that these two were devils. He would state how he was actually a demon lord himself. Rias, hearing that, she would honestly laugh, hearing that part. She didn't believe that part since, well, she still believed that she was stronger than Issei. And if Issei was a demon lord, then she must have been something completely different. She must have been Opus themselves. Issei. He would just keep a straight face though, staring at Rias. Sona would begin to sweat as the tension in the room was becoming noticeably thick. Issei's aura would actually flare up at this moment, before calming down. One snap of his fingers, and people would surround Rias and Sona. The two girls, they would be dragged to the center of the school. They would struggle to get out of the people's grip, but for everybody they managed to free their arms from, two more would immediately grab them in their place. Issei would walk over to the school balcony, watching as they were being brought over to the center of the school. He would declare that the girls would be fighting each other for his entertainment. After Rias had just so disrespectfully decided to laugh at him for stating his title, for not believing in him at all, believing that he was a liar. They just disrespected him. They just decided to go against him completely, and so they would have to be punished. Rias and Sona, they would initially refuse though. Kids would actually boo hearing this, and some of the girls from the school who were jealous of Rias and Sona, they would jump in wanting to humiliate them. They would let their envy for the girls be known when they began to pull out Rias' hair, pulling out a couple of strands, and others they would try to mic Sona's face. Several other students would cheer seeing this. Sona and Rias, they would be forced to defend themselves, but it was against a large group of girls coming from each and every direction. Their peerages would come in to assist the two in their battle, only to also get overwhelmed by the numbers. Everyone was against the two peerages now. The peerage members would be forced into submitting to Issei. Sona and Rias, they would have been left as the social targets for the rest of the school. Issei would hammer it into their heads that it didn't have to be this way. If they were just nice from the get-go and not party poopers, well, they would be treated far kinder. Sona had a hard time believing this. She would even try to call out Issei on a couple of occasions throughout the next couple of weeks, but Issei would just watch as they got pummeled to the ground by some of the other students. Eventually, Sona would prove to have some worth to Issei besides some form of entertainment, that use being in the fact that she was really good with paperwork. Rias, on the other hand, she would be turned into a clown, makeup and all. She would be forced to entertain the rest of the school by doing clown tricks, making balloons, juggling some balls, going into those tiny cars, and getting pie thrown in their face. Those sort of entertainment. Akano, Rias' former queen, she would be turned into Issei's professional tea maker. Yeah, Issei, he would let her know that sometimes he felt like being part of the British royalty, and this was probably the closest he'd get to. He would compliment Akano's tea skills as well. Her tea tasted really nice. This was definitely how the British lived. Akano, she knew better than to actually say anything. Observing everyone sipping his tea on the balcony, Issei would just try and talk in a British accent, which was really bad, and Akino, she would even cringe hearing it as well, but she would try to hide it. She felt remorse for Rias though, but she would also realize that there was really nothing that she could do in such a situation. Issei, he was just too powerful for them to handle. They tried to report the situation to the higher-ups, but Issei, he was always one step ahead of them. He always knew when they were about to cast a magical circle of any kind, and he would have Sanji, his second-in-command at this point, stomp them each and every time. A fallen angel, going under the alias of Yuma, would even try to infiltrate the school a year later. She would have been informed of there actually being a boy with brown hair and pink highlights at this school, apparently being rather strong for his age, and he supposedly had a sacred gear as well, albeit yet to be unlocked for some reason. Yuma, she would be there to investigate, and of course Issei would sense her malicious intent. He would send out Konako to deal with her though. Konako and the rest of Rias' former peerage, alongside Sona's own, they had been Issei's sparring partners for a while now. Not Sona, but Konako, she would have become far stronger than she once was from all of the beatdowns at the hands of Issei. Fighting Rainier when proved to be rather easy for Konako in comparison. She would drag the fallen angel's battered body over to Issei's headquarters, the cafeteria, in order to, well, evaluate the fallen angel. Rainier, she would just glare at Issei, and she would curse at him, mentioning all of the stuff that she would do to him once she was freed. She would make sure he suffered at her hands, not only him, but everybody who worked for him as well. Issei would just listen to Rainier, nodding like, okay. Before, well, deciding what to do with her right after, he would extend his arm and grab her face. Rainier would be confused as to what Issei was doing, only to scream in terror, not knowing what he was about to do to her. All she knew was that she felt a lot of pain all of a sudden. The next day though, Issei, he would have a new addition to his trophies. This would have been the head of a fallen angel. Sanji, he would actually applaud Issei for his new trophy before requesting something from his friend. That being, well, to, just kind of date Sona. He was kind of attracted to her. He had to admit she was cute. That's basically all what Sanji was saying. Issei, he would just laugh before patting his friend on the back. He would give him the green light, acknowledging the fact that he didn't really care what he did with her. Like, she just knew how to do good paperwork. And honestly, right about now, at this point, she didn't even need to be doing his paperwork anymore. So if Sanji wanted to borrow her for whatever reason, then it was fine by him. He would be too focused on playing fighting games in the computer room anyways, or watching the fights that were happening all around the school with a piece of toast in his mouth during the mornings as well. He'd sense a new magical presence enter the school one day though. This was odd, considering the fact that it didn't hold any sort of malicious intent though. He would raise an eyebrow. He knew that it couldn't have been from any of the members from Rias's or Sona's peerage either, and that summoned the being, since, well, not only was it not just one, but it was two, and, well, he had shut down that whole operation a long time ago. He doubted that they managed to form a blockade for his sensing abilities, or became that strong so quickly either. He would go to investigate, knowing that no one currently held a candle to them in terms of pure raw magic. He would actually meet a blonde by the name of Riser Phoenix. He looked to be in his early 20s, and they had a strange way of talking. Not only was there just Riser Phoenix either, but there was a woman with silver hair as well by the name of Grafia. Honestly, when it came on to Grafia though, she wouldn't really be saying much. Rather, Riser would be doing all of the talking. He was in his early 20s, or at least it looked like he was in his early 20s, and he had a very strange way of talking. His way of talking would be revolving around him addressing himself in the third person. He would decide to actually mock the man by talking in the third person as well. It didn't seem like he caught on to the whole fact he was mocking him though. Grafia would have just been, face palming at this whole interaction. She couldn't believe this was really going on. So, when it came on to Riser though, he would decide to end it rather quickly by asking for Rias. He was more concerned about Rias of all people, and he would mention how she was apparently his fiancée and that they would be getting married soon. Issei would look over to Grafia, who he would have realized was exponentially stronger than Riser, so he would have taken her word a bit more than Riser's own, and she would just nod in, affirmation. She would nod affirming or validifying Riser's statement. Honestly, even if she wasn't there to validify Riser's statement, he would just let Riser take her. He'd let Riser know that he could take the girl, but her peerage, you see, they would stay with Issei from now on. Grafia would want to rebuttal. She would want to say something, but Issei would flare his aura a little bit, and in Grafia, she would begin to sweat. Riser would as well. Riser would have honestly been pretty fine with that deal though, and he could sense that there was something really off about Issei. He wasn't in the mood for discovering whether or not that aura he had just released was his full power, or if there was more to it. Issei would teleport over to where Rias was, grab her, and then teleport her back to Riser, handing her over to him. This would surprise both Riser and Rias. I should also mention Grafia as well. He didn't even set up a magical circle. That was what really surprised all of them. Riser's uneasiness about Issei would just begin to grow, seeing what just happened. He wasn't in the mood for figuring out what else Issei had up his sleeve. He knew magic, and to a high caliber seemingly. Not only this, but he seemed to be rather strong as well. He didn't want to fight Issei at all, so he would just decide to take Rias and leave. Grafia would thank Issei for his time and leave as well. Rias, she would come back to school a week later, and Issei would have to admit he really wasn't keeping track of the time at all. Rias, she would be despising Issei at this point, but Issei, he would basically hand her her clown getup. she really had no choice in the matter. She was still too weak to fight against Issei or even Riser at this point. She wanted to tell her brother about the situation, but Riser made sure a muzzle was kept on her until the day of their wedding. Akeno, she would have devoted all of her loyalty to Issei at this point. Seeing this would cause Rias to actually tear up in sadness. What made things even worse for Rias though was when Akeno would even bring in a boy by the name of Gasper before Issei. Rias' eyes, they would widen. Issei would comment in shock about him and Akeno having produced a daughter. Akeno, she would just sweat drop hearing this, and she would bring up the fact that Gasper, he was, well, a boy. Issei would gasp in amazement, like, he would see it as if he had a son now. He could teach him all of his sword techniques. Akeno, she would just be looking at Issei weirdly, like, But Rias, she would have been convinced at this point that Issei had to have some brainwashing capabilities. She'd clutch her best friend's shoulders, telling her to snap out of it. Sona would shrug her off. Well, not Sona, but Akeno. She would shrug her off though. Neither she or anyone here were being brainwashed by Issei. They were doing everything out of their own free volition right now. At least now, they knew their own capabilities, they knew their own strengths, they knew where they fell. Earlier, it wasn't all that willingly. They had to be beaten down over and over again until the point of submission. But now, looking back at it, Akeno kinda didn't regret it at all. She regretted having to see her best friend Rias in such poor condition most of the time, having been reduced to a clown for crying out loud. But she had to admit that Rias, she could have been at least a little bit nicer to Issei. Rias couldn't believe what she would be hearing right now. Akeno, she would just be trying to explain that them listening to Issei was their way of adapting to survive in such new environments, and she would even stand beside Issei and rest her head on his shoulder. Rias, she would just be speechless and storm out of the room. She was frustrated. Issei would find himself having to interact with Irina and Zenobia a month later. He wasn't even all that concerned about Rias anymore. He honestly forgot about the situation already. And apparently, these two were from the church. Irina and Zenobia, they planned on finding the culprit behind the stolen fragments of Excalibur. Issei, he would nod in understanding and decide to wave them away. He could care less about their little Easter hunt or whatever they called it. He wasn't expecting to meet Irina again though, after so many years, and find out that, well, Irina was actually a girl this whole time. That was what was really surprising to Issei. He had to be honest. He would even tell her this. He thought that Irina was a guy for like most of their childhood. Irina, she wouldn't have shown a surprise at how much more chaotic Issei had become when she saw the state of the school and found out that it was because of Issei. They didn't leave on the greatest of terms. You see, Irina, she would decide to call Issei a devil for what he did to these kids, but Issei would shrug. It was pretty fitting, to be honest. She She wasn't technically wrong when you really look at it. He was a demon lord for crying out loud, so calling him a devil, it was pretty suiting. It pretty much made sense. It was pretty fitting, and well, yeah, Issei wasn't expecting to meet back up with Irina anytime soon after that interaction, especially in such a sorry state the next time around. The next time you saw her, she would have been a battered and bruised mess stretched out on the doorstep. There would be a note attached to her as well. Reading the note, Issei would realize that there was a new threat at hand. He would teleport to Kuo Academy and be on its rooftop. He would stare down the vampiric figure with red eyes, black hair, pale skin, and several black wings. Issei, he would launch off the roof, and he would actually sucker punch Kokabiel into the ground. Kokabiel, he was surprised to feel the strength behind that attack. And Issei, he would be relentless in his attacking though. He would headbutt Kokabiel and kick him into a tree at one point. Kokabiel, he would be coughing up blood, questioning whether this was revenge for what he did to the girl or not. Was this girl really that dear to Issei? Or something? Was she like his girlfriend or what? Issei would deny all of it though. He would say that the reason why he was going so hard on Kokabiel was because of the fact that he then decided to, well, set up a fight between the two of them. They knew, he would just let Kokabiel know this. Issei knew Irina a good couple years back, but they became pretty distant, so he didn't really care about Irina all that much. What he did care about though was the fact that this guy decided to request a fight with Issei, and a fight was what this guy was going to get. He got Issei excited. He thought that he was going to be strong. But, well, Issei was wrong. Kokabiel, he was honestly pretty weak by Issei's standards. He was really only allowing for Issei to use a limited amount of strength without just killing him immediately. He was honestly just killing time at this point. Kokabiel was basically a distraction for Issei. Kokabiel, hearing this, would have felt insulted. He couldn't believe this. He was just a time killer? Come on now. Kokabiel would hear this, and he would try to send an aerial attack at Issei, only for their boy to actually reflect all of it. He would grab Kokabiel by the face, but pause when sensing a new magical presence enter the field. He would look around and he would see a person in shining white armor with blue wings. This was apparently the White Dragon Emperor. Haha, Issei would smirk. He would welcome his rival, Vali. He would see the battered form of Kokabiel, and he would honestly be impressed. He thought that while Issei was going to be struggling against this guy, but no, he was wrong. Issei really knew how to hold his own in the fight. He supposed his rival wasn't going to be half bad, at least from what he had seen so far. Issei would signal for Vali to come at him. Vali would do so, trying to half his power, forcing him to go into his scale mode form. But it didn't seem to have any sort of effect on Issei whatsoever. Instead, Issei, he would rush at Vali, punching him in the chest. It would fracture the half-devil's armor. Vali would be struggling to breathe, having felt that blow to the chest all the way. Issei would knee Vali in the face right after, expecting more from his rival. Vali would realize the situation he was in now, and it wasn't the most ideal of situations. He realized that he needed to get stronger right now, so he was trying to escape. And look, it was either that or literally die by Issei's hands. The same Issei who hadn't even used this boosted gear yet. Vali, he would have just been speechless. He didn't want to fight Issei anymore, and even Albion had to agree that they were in a bad situation. But Issei, he wasn't going to allow Vali to escape. No. Issei, he would just drag Vali back down to the ground, forcing him to land on his back. He would stomp on the taller boy's ribcage, and it would actually break on impact. One of the bones, they would actually puncture his heart, and that right then and there would kill him. Issei would have carried back 2 trophies to the school. These trophies being the head of an ex-fallen angel leader and the head of his rival, the White Dragon Emperor. Issei would be awaiting the next time the White Dragon Emperor found a new host. Hopefully, that one would be stronger than the last one, and not the next one. It would actually give him a good fight, push him to his limits. But for now, Issei would decide to just go ahead and just have more briskets, or like Issei would decide to have more tea, pretending that he was British, part of the British royal family. He would even just be waving his hand, drink tea at like 5 p.m. and he would have some crumpets as well. And that's how we end the story. Yeah, it's pretty wacky, but it's whatever. It's your boy King Tyrant X, out. Peace.